Hello and welcome to episode 34 of the Adamola Bookman podcast. My name's Al Bond and I'm joined by my co-host John Coughlin. Hello, Johnny.
Hey, Al, how you doing?
Yeah, tickety-boo, thank you, fella. And this week we're doing The Rebel Who Would Be King, the Eric Cantona story by Philippe Auclair. So, Johnny, you are a Manchester United fan of a certain vintage. Yes. What do you know about Eric Cantona?
You know, when you're a certain age, you know things that you shouldn't know, really, like his date of birth and stuff like that. 24th of May, 1966. He happens to share a birthday with my brother, but I would have known that anyway, you know. Yeah, I was deep into Cantona when I was a kid. I was 11 when he kicked that Matthew Simmons. I had been to the previous game when he scored against Blackburn at Old Trafford. And I remember where I was when I heard about, you know, it's 1995, so you hear about these things. I remember my brother coming into the bedroom we shared at home and telling me about it. But of course, I had to make the picture in my head. And it was a grave scene. It was devastating. Reading the book, I guess I forgot. It was, in that moment, Cantona was finished, right?
Yeah, it seemed perfectly feasible. I mean, I as we've often said, and I'm often forced to remind the listeners that I am a bit older than you. So I was 17 when that happened. But I was checking football. I mean, I remember exactly where I was. It was the front room in my house, big surprise. But I was straight on the old teletext, hello, and it was like front page of a teletext, and you just knew, oh, this is big. And the thing is, at the time, I reveled in it because I think mid-90s, we all absolutely despised United in a way that I don't now. And he was the tormentor in chief, wasn't he, Cantona? He was the guy that really was put the fear of God into all of us. So it was just so huge, wasn't it, Johnny? It was so huge, that event, and everything that followed it.
It's a reminder, the book, in how central to the legend of Cantona that the kick is now. But in that moment, by God, was I terrified.
I cannot talk about this book without talking about Philippe Auclair. Yeah, Philippe Auclair is a voice I'm very familiar with from various football podcasts, but he has a very distinctive voice because he is French, and every single line I read in this book, I could hear his voice, just every single line. And I'm not saying that's bad. It kind of gave it some charm, but oh, goodness me. It would be true to say that he has bought into the Cantona myth.
Yes.
He describes Cantona in ways which are really quite extraordinary. Even like a step up from Balaguer with Messi, he is enchanted by Eric Cantona.
Well, I think he thinks about Cantona much the same way I did when I was 11.
Well, I think that's fair enough. And he is obviously a very captivating footballer. There's no question about it. He was the main man, wasn't he, when he played in the Premier League?
There was some interesting bits in his book, wasn't there?
There was, although rather dishearteningly, it starts on about page 3 with this. People looking for scandalous tidbits will be disappointed. Oh, yeah, I am disappointed, Philippe. Yeah, I am looking for scandalous tidbits, and I am not sure what you really think people are looking for in a footballer's autobiography.
He did spend a lot of the book trashing the other book in existence about Cantona, Cantona's own autobiography. He spent a lot of time trashing that.
Although that's where a lion's share of the quotes came from for this. Again, he's another chap who didn't have a great deal of access to old Eric.
And he spent 3 years writing this book. Just to say, I read this on Kindle, so it gave me the disheartening prediction of 12 hours to read it. I just don't know why these books are always so long.
Yeah, I was going to say it took him 3 years to write it, and it felt like it took me 3 years to read it. Also, for a man writing in his second language, I was consulting my dictionary a lot. Bloody hell. Philip's vocabulary, there are some words in there which I've forgotten. Wow. They were
Yeah,
words I was unfamiliar with. I don't think I've ever seen written down before. I
yeah.
can cite zero examples of that, sorry, Johnny, but yeah, he's some vocabulary.
Rebarbative. That was one that stood out to me. Unattractive and objectionable. But in your defence, Al, I think where some of that might come from is the French equivalent might be more commonly used than the English one, you know?
Yeah, I think there was an amanuensis or something at one point, and I was like, oh, hello. Sounds
Well,
like a villain in a video game.
it's an artistic assistant. That one I know.
Bollocks. He made me look thick.
Nabokov, when he wrote Lolita and the other books he wrote in English, he was writing in his fourth language. And I think Joseph Conrad was writing in his third when he wrote Heart of Darkness. It's remarkable, isn't it?
Well, listeners can go back and listen to my biography of Messi and decide how remarkable that was.
But just, sorry, on the biography of Messi, your competitor there, Balaguer, I remember asking at the time, was it a cultural thing, how he spoke about Messi? And they're so obvious, like, you know, obviously Philippe Auclair, who I like, he is a man of culture, isn't he? In a way that I wouldn't consider myself to be. And there are turns in this book, which I'm not sure I really would have went for myself. Can I just read a few things?
Please do, Johnny, because there are some absolutely astonishing quotes. He really does he forces your nose in his culture, eh? I don't really want to read about French poetry. I don't fucking care.
And what you mentioned, actually, when you said last week, when we talked about Auclair, that he's a fan of cricket. How many cricket references, like comparisons? Who's reading this book? How many, does he think that everyone who reads this book, I have no clue when you're talking about cricket, like.
Yeah, you know, like Papin and Cantona were like Laker and Locke in the 1956 Ashes. If one doesn't get you, the other one will. Certainly very helpful for any French translations. I mean, presumably this book was written in French as well.
He says things like, I don't even know what this means. Characters appeared and vanished on the scene like cuckolds and lovers in a George Feydeau farce. Yep. The Marseilles shirt was like the shirt of Nessus, which wounded the child in Cantona. He said, footballers never lie on the field of play. He's obviously never seen a game of football in his fucking life. And then other things he said, you know, so Cantona ended up doing community service. Like, I don't know if he was just emboldened the more he read the book and the more he felt like he knew Cantona. Eric adored children in whom he saw a reflection of his former and truer self before he'd been emotionally maimed by the corrupting power of professional football. And then he goes on, he truly loved every single one of those kids. What is that based on, Philippe? And he said, like, another thing, he goes, Cantona had always been a believer in Chateaubriand's maxim, talent is a long apprenticeship. I think the Venn diagram of Chateaubriand readers, whoever Chateaubriand is, and football book readers is probably slimmer. The kind of overlapping bit is slimmer than you might realise.
Well, there's one person in that Venn diagram, and he's French, and he likes cricket. No, I mean, that's it. I've got a couple of quotes here, and I was like, oh, I'm worried. I hope Johnny doesn't pull one of my quotes. There's no chance you're going to put one of my quotes out, because every single page there's like some wild analogy. His retirement was like Arthur Rimbaud cutting short his life as a poet to become a slave merchant in Abyssinia. Yeah, I thought that when he retired as well, Johnny. I was like, oh, this just what's he doing? It's just like Arthur Rimbaud. Oh, no.
Shall we get into the book itself?
We should, because that's what we do. But there were things I learned, because honestly, Johnny, I knew absolutely fuck all about his career before he came to Leeds. And in fact, I didn't realise how well he was regarded. I thought he was a bit of a chancer who only found form when he came to England, but I was quite wrong there. Oh, you did, eh? Yeah, I wondered how much you knew about him. Yeah, but he was he describes him as one point in France, long before he ever came to England, that he was like the first true football celebrity, in as much Platini was famous for being a footballer, but Cantona was a famous man.
One more. he said that a choreographed celebration would have debased the act of scoring in the eyes of Cantona. He makes some leaps into the mind of Cantona, I think.
I will give you that Cantona does give you a lot of opportunity to make those leaps, because there are some just quite wild quotes. I mean, the quotes are nuts, aren't they? I mean, you just don't get these quotes from any other footballer. Even Socrates didn't come anywhere near to just the waffling bullshit that comes out of Cantona.
Philippe Auclair, he wrestles with the kind of commercial side of Cantona, which Cantona has so obviously really, really embraced. And I guess it troubled Auclair because, you know, this is some kind of beatnik poet kind of character in Auclair's eyes. And he says, Auclair says, it undermined the sincerity of his sincerity. Anyway, let's move on to the book itself.
Okie doke. So he's a child of Marseille. I must confess, I never was able to picture Cantona's parents. He just seems to me as one of those people who just arrives fully formed.
I had read the book that Auclair trashes so heartily throughout this one. And one of the things that I thought I remembered, but I remembered it wrong, is he's not a troglodyte. He was not brought up in a cave. But his parents or his grandparents did build a house that part of it was kind of a cave. Like, you know, they kind of extended on a cave.
Oh, his grandparents. Eric loved to attend parties thrown by his grandparents where he'd sing with the gypsies. Yes, he would. It's like Game of Thrones. Like, come gypsies, come let young Eric sing with you. At 6 years old, Eric had a violent passion for Johan Cruyff's Ajax. A violent passion. Yeah, you did. How did that manifest itself?
Well, I had a violent passion for Eric Cantona. I remember when he came back in the game against Liverpool, and Nicky Butt scored 67 or 68 seconds in, and then Fowler scored 2, and I really did have a total breakdown. That's how my violent passion for Manchester United manifested itself at the time. I think I was knocking things over and crying and stuff like that.
Well, I mean, yes, I've had that as a child. There was times when my grandmother tried to ban me from watching Nottingham Forest. Well, it didn't work. No, it didn't work.
He's the middle son of 3 boys, same as myself. I see a lot of myself in Cantona.
Yeah, as do I. One thing that tracks about Eric Cantona is he's a big fan of the Doors. I was like, ding, 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 ding. Yeah, that makes sense. Like, I'm the Lizard King. I can do anything. The soft eggshell mind, that sort of quasi-bullshit poetry would have been very appealing to Cantona. And I must confess, to a young me as well. I was a big fan of the Doors as well. However, it doesn't track is there's a spell where he plays as a youth and he goes to Gabon to play Libreville. And he smokes a joint. Curiosity soon gave way to fear. Yeah, man, you got paranoid, dude. And he smoked a joint and he's got real like, oh, look at him. He's Aldous Huxley experimenting with a joint in Gabon.
He was on national service, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's fun, isn't it? Another lovely avant-garde Eric Cantona image is when he played as a youth player in London. And they said he went to a deserted nightclub and he was just dancing by himself in a 1980s London nightclub. That was just Eric. I love that image.
Yeah, whoever it was with him said that only Cantona could kind of do that kind of thing. He was a young player. Obviously, he was quite good at football. And he chose Auxerre over Nice when Nice are kind of much bigger, more successful club. But when he went for trials with Nice and he asked for a kit and they said that he had to pay for it.
No.
And then he went to Auxerre. The wily fox, Guy Roux.
Yeah, Guy Roux is a real character here. He was able to resist the temptation of Nice where the beautiful women all wore monokinis. Monokinis, another word. I was like, really? Is that a thing?
A monokini? I've never heard of it.
It's what Borat wore.
A one piece. Does it mean they're topless?
Ooh, maybe that is what it means. It's just turned into a sexy podcast.
This is the one you're always looking for.
Hello.
But But yeah,
Anyway.
Giroud, when he asked for kit from Giroud, he was like, yeah, take as many as you want, man. And that's why he's signed for Auxerre.
Giroud is an absolute legend of the game. Like, was like Auxerre manager for like 30 years or something. Incredible. Took them from a tiny little provincial club into an established Ligue 1 side. In fact, Nottingham Forest played them in the UEFA Cup in the mid-90s, and we beat them. But still, Auxerre, Giroud, an absolute legend and a huge part of Cantona's life. Auclair keeps returning to this. It's like managers who succeeded with Cantona adopted the role of father figure, and Giroud very much did that, and obviously very famously so did Alex Ferguson.
And also Giroud, and here's an interesting tidbit. He managed to prevail upon President Mitterrand, to send a message to the Home Office asking for his sentence of 2 weeks in prison for kicking Matthew Simmons to be overturned on appeal, and it was reduced to community service. So there you go, Giroud.
Genuinely astonishing, wasn't it? Like the reach of Giroud, like go on, Mitterrand, get it out there. Because they worried that the relationship between young people of France and England would be affected if Cantona was convicted and had to do prison time.
Yep.
I mean, we're not entirely sure that this actually had any effect, but we're told that it happened. But get in, Giroud. Get in, son.
Right from the start, Cantona, he's got a short fuse, this boy, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. He feels injustice.
He feels it very keenly. So he goes to Auxerre. He fairly quickly establishes himself in Auxerre. And they're in Poland. He scored a scissors kick in this game. And then someone threw an egg at him. And he went in just throwing punches, went into the crowd, just started throwing punches. He headbutted his own teammate because they were all playing some game, a European game. And it had snowed unexpectedly and they were all out clearing the snow from the pitch so that they could play. And there was one fella, Martini, who refused to do it. Cantona just headbutted him. He's rough.
Well, yeah, no kidding. But I mean, not a team player. I'm all for it. You can see Auclair's approval of this action.
The last book we did was Duncan Ferguson. We were just like, thug this, thug that. You know what I mean? It's kind of different. I don't know how, but it is kind of different.
I mean, you say that now and but it is different, isn't it?
But how?
It is.
How?
Because he was better at football, so that makes it better. Right? And he was cooler and he read poetry. He was French, not Scottish. It's a more cultural headbutt.
If Cantona dressed as a woman and went into a fishing village in Scotland to pick a fight,
I wondered where this was going.
what would you say about that?
I would warmly applaud it.
There you
go. Yeah, I mean, I am very fond of old Eric. I am. I can't help it.
He also scissors kicked an opponent, Der Zakarian of Nantes, and got a 2-game ban for his trouble. When he came to England, I guess there wasn't an article that was written about him which didn't describe him as France's enfant terrible of football.
Yeah. But he made weird career choices as well, didn't he? He went to big teams, but then he went to like peculiar little teams I'm not really familiar with. Just to throw it in, Matra Racing? What? Matra Racing? What is this? Pro Evo? There was a football team called Matra Racing.
Yeah, and Nimes. That's not a big team. And that was after he played in Marseille and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Pourquoi? Go to a big team.
So actually, maybe we can, I don't know, we can have this conversation now and then. He was the big man for the small stage. Discuss.
Again, this is not necessarily something I associated with him, but equally, you can't argue with it when you actually look at the statistics. I mean, his record in Europe was pretty dire, wasn't it? And you mentioned Roy Keane. His quote about Eric Cantona was genuinely savage. I think I must have read it before. Eric will never rank alongside the true great European players. That's the stage that really counts. Maybe he wasn't capable, and maybe he never will be. Oh, you bandit.
Yeah.
But there is some, for all of his strengths, he was a big bloke, wasn't he? A big, I'm loath to say lumbering, but he was in that department. He was built more like Ibrahimovic than a runner.
But we'll say, to play devil's advocate, he scored 2 FA Cup finals. He scored 6 games in a row, like in loads of 1-0 victories in that lead into the league win when they chased down Newcastle. And also, English teams were crapping United are obviously the big one. There was that whole 3 foreigner rule, which would have excluded players like Giggs and Keane, even Brian McClare. They were counted as foreigners. Obviously, this applied across Europe. It's not like there was no foreigners playing. When Barcelona beat United 4-0 in 1994, I think Hadji and players like that and Stoichkov were playing, weren't they?
Yeah.
So it's not like there weren't foreign players in other places, but yeah, when you think about it as well, the reason I just bring it up now at this point is because maybe, it didn't work out for him at Marseille, so he went to Nimes. So sometimes he does seem to have not exactly ran away, but maybe hidden a little bit.
Well, I put it to you, Johnny, is obviously Cantona has such cachet back home and in France. But do you think like a German bloke our age would know who he was? Do you think a German kid would know who he was? Do you think a Spanish fella would know who he was, or a Brazilian? I'm not so sure. I think he's just super, super famous in England and France and has pretty much zero recognition elsewhere.
Well, I'm not sure that that's true, simply because, let's say, was it in 1998 and they did that Brazil Nike ad?
I agree, but I put it to you that people in Brazil were watching that advert going, who's that?
But do you really think that the Albond equivalent in Germany, Albont, doesn't know who Cantona is?
I'm saying yes. I don't think they do. I don't think he has any cachet. I don't know. I think it's interesting. I just put it to you that he has outsized celebrity in England and France in a way that he probably doesn't have in Italy. I mean, it was fascinating. He played like 1 game in Italy in his whole career. He played 1 game. That's wild.
And just on the bottling thing, he said when he retired that part of it was because he wasn't going to play in the World Cup, which was going to be in France in 1998. But according to Philippe Auclair, Cantona, Aimé Jacquet asked Cantona to come back. Cantona had been captain before he kicked the fella in Palace, and then he was stripped of his captaincy, but Aimé Jacquet asked him to come back, and he said no. And if he had, when you think about it, if he had extended his career by 2 more seasons, he'd have won the Champions League and the World Cup.
He often makes the point that Stefan Guivarch was up front for the World Cup, and imagine if they'd had Cantona there. I just don't know, but Auclair says in his last season at United, you could see the weight he was carrying. He had like a double chin. His hips were widening, perhaps. Any pace he had, he was losing. I mean, perhaps he knew it was the right time, but equally, it does seem to me that, as soon as he decided not to play on for France, that he really did lose his passion for the game at that point.
Yeah.
He deliberately gave up the chance to conquer more lands or whatever that. He wept salt tears. At the age of 30, he wept salt tears because he had no more lands to conquer, right? That's the one. Alexander the Great. I'm sure that's the quote.
But on his pace, Ryan Giggs said when he got going, he was as fast as anyone. And Ryan Giggs knows a thing or two about blistering pace, Alistair Bond.
Like a dog chasing a silver wrapper. Well, that's it. We'll never know. And I guess that buys into his the enigma of Cantona, doesn't it? Would he have gone on to do those things? I suspect, Johnny, that he would not. I suspect Man United wouldn't have won the Champions League with him there. Oh, I know that's a big shout, isn't it? But I mean, that United team, the treble team was better than the team with Cantona in it.
Yeah, it probably was. It probably was.
Even though it featured. And this is like, okay, I'm going to ask you. I mean, I've given you a clue there, but who does Philippe Auclair really not rate?
Andy Cole.
Andy Cole. Fuck it now.
He fucking hates Andy Cole.
As usual, Andy Cole has squandered another chance presented to him. But I mean, all you ever hear about is Andy Cole's failures. Bloody hell.
Yeah. It sounds like Philippe Auclair would have really gotten behind the kind of the schoolyard bully, right? Because Cantona doesn't like Cole, so Philippe Auclair is going to stick the boot in at every opportunity.
Teddy Sheringham didn't like him either. No, it's wild. Andy Cole, what, the fourth highest ever Premier League scorer? Or in Philippe Auclair's mind, just a complete and utter joke of a footballer, a clown.
But okay, let's try and get through some of his life. As you said, like, maybe it's more interesting to talk about the stuff in France because everyone kind of knows the England stuff.
I mean, genuinely, what can we talk about the thing? Man, he barely played for Leeds, right? I mean, like,
yeah, I didn't know that
at all. Yeah, I thought he had more than, he played like 20, 30 games for Leeds total.
He scored as many goals the year they won the league as Tony DeRigo.
And that was the last time he scored a hat-trick as well.
I knew he never scored a hat-trick for United. But yeah, so he played for Auxerre, and then
he had these peculiar loan spells, which always served to confuse me.
Exactly. He was at Marseille, and it never really worked for him at Marseille, and he was sent out on loan to Montpellier. So, like, when he was at Marseille, Bernard Tapie is one of the common. I wonder if there's a book about Bernard Tapie. He seems like quite a character. But
he pops up, doesn't he? Steve McMahon was in there as well. I like
yes, he was.
Steve McMahon
being a dickhead.
Yeah,
we can come back to that. But they went to play against Torpedo Moscow in a friendly organised by Bernard Tapie for Armenian earthquake victims. Fair enough. And Cantona kicked the ball out of play and threw his Marseille shirt at the ref. And then he was sent out on loan to Montpellier. So he was always doing these. He was always just losing his temper, wasn't he? Seeing red, I guess.
Yeah, and Auclair says that was like the image of him really in France. That was what everyone pictured. It was him throwing his shirt in a charity game.
Charity game, like he was sent out to Montpellier where he threw a shoe at a teammate who was complaining about the team's inability to score when they were walking in the tunnel after a game.
Don't mess with him.
He was sent back to Marseille then, and it actually worked briefly for him at Marseille.
Yeah, I just wanted very briefly to touch on some of the players he played with in France. Eric Cantona and Carlos Valderrama. What the fuck? How did I not know that? How did I not know they were teammates? And apparently they were great together.
Yeah, and he was also great with the flame-haired Jean-Pierre Papin.
Bloody flame-haired. Chris Waddle.
Yeah.
It was a load of fun. Clive Allen.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Even when he went to Leeds, Lee Chapman could speak French because he had spent some time playing in France.
He was at Nantes. Yeah, Forest bought him from Nantes. He was a big one. That day that Cloughie whacked the supporters, Lee Chapman scored a hat-trick for us against QPR.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, the other Lee Chapman thing was, and he addresses it in the book, was Cantona's reason for leaving Leeds was that he had an affair with the actress Leslie Ash. And that was definitely what we all thought at school. Definitely.
He's French, he's class, he's shagging Leslie Ash. That was the chant, wasn't it?
It was. And I certainly believed it and have repeated it as gospel truth forevermore.
But again, Philippe Auclair, who knows? You can never say really definitively that something like that didn't happen.
Well, absolutely. If we can just touch on Leslie Ash as well, she was ahead of her time, wasn't she? Like those lips that she got, like nowadays, she'd just be normal. No one would even blink. At the time, though, she was a pariah of plastic surgery idiocy. Like poor old girl. I can remember The Horrible Sun, like on the TV guide, like she was like joining a new show, like Holby City, some shit like that. And they had a picture of her on it. It was like Holby City, new face. And it was because Leslie Ash had a new funny face with big duck lips. She would have been normal now.
So he went back to Marseille, and he was. It was all going fine for him, and he played under Beckenbauer. But then he got
Beckenbauer. How do we not know this?
yeah. And then he got frozen out by this Belgian lad. What was his name?
Gürtel, was it something like that?
Gutel,
Okay.
yeah. And maybe this is where Auclair loved. One of the reasons Auclair loves Cantona. Cantona hated Bernard Tapie. He's described him as a cheater all throughout his life. At various times, always having shots at Bernard Tapie. And he had said things about Tapie giving people shots, injections, as we talked about before. And Chris Waddle has talked about that. And he was moved to Nimes, and he was bought by public money. The mayor of Nimes bought Cantona. Is that something you can do?
Excellent use of public funds.
Threw a ball at a ref. This is kind of what done for him in the end, wasn't it? He threw a ball at a ref, and he was brought before an FA disciplinary panel, kind of lectured him. He was only 24. And then he went from panel member to panel member, telling each of them that they were an idiot. And his 4-game ban became a 2-month ban.
I mean, you can't throw footballs at refs. You know you can't do. You're not meant to do that. You're an idiot. You're an idiot.
He retired, age 24, and then on a skiing holiday, he was convinced to kind of find a solution. And this is something I didn't know. I didn't know the central role that Gérard Houllier and Michel Platini played in the life and career of Eric Cantona.
Yeah, exactly right. Houllier was a huge proponent for Cantona. Quickly going back to the skiing, when he was a youth player, he went cross-country skiing with the football team. And it turned out he had one of the 5 best times in all of France for a youth skier. No, he didn't. Come on, Auxerre. Come on. He could have been anything he wanted. He could have been anything.
Well, he couldn't have been a saxophone player. Apparently, he sucked at that. And apparently, his art is not great either. So, and what do you think of his acting?
I mean, I actually haven't seen anything. Oh, I've seen him that Waiting for Eric. Is it? Is that the movie? Yeah. I guess he played Eric Cantona pretty convincingly.
Did you see him in Elizabeth I?
No, I didn't.
Just got with Kate Blanchett. He played a French ambassador. Anyway, I'm not I love Cantona, but I don't know if he could have been anything necessarily. Anyway, so yeah, Houllier and Platini had been Cantona's. He was national manager, and Cantona played with him. And Platini had kind of made him very much the kind of centerpiece of the team. Sorry, himself and JPP, Jean-Pierre Papin. And Houllier was Platini's number 2. But it was those guys who engineered the move to England. And again, I guess I'd never really questioned the idea that he was on a trial at Wednesday. I never thought that, because I guess I didn't know about his profile in France. But it is weird that this French international player was made to do a 2-week trial at Sheffield Wednesday. And then he was like, you know what? Fuck you.
Well, it's wild. And that's going to be engraved on. Actually, I think Trevor Francis is dead. Well, that should be on his gravestone. But it's one of those, isn't he? Let Cantona go. You had him right there in your hand, Sheffield Wednesday.
So Francis was kind of humming and hawing. He said, this guy is amazing, but I'm not sure. He is the enfant terrible of French football after all. So Cantona kind of got tired of, he obviously has a big ego, and he probably thought he was above this. So he was expected to sign for Wednesday and start a game against whoever it was. But then he signed for Leeds. But whatever about Trevor Francis's mistake, it's really Wilkinson. He is the real idiot, isn't he?
Yeah, Howard Wilkinson certainly looks bad. I think he was just a product of the environment at the time. He wasn't prepared to coddle Cantona, right? And as we discussed earlier, the only managers who ever really got something out of Cantona were managers who really were prepared to pander to him. And he simply wasn't.
Yeah, but, we obviously look at this story the huge benefit of hindsight. And Trevor Francis wasn't really to know. He had enough evidence to think that maybe this Cantona thing is not going to go right. But Wilkinson, I don't think you can give him the same benefit there, because he had plenty of evidence that Cantona was Absolutely wonderful at football, but also manageable. Cantona was kind of getting pissed off that he was being kept on the bench a lot, right?
Yeah.
And Leeds, after winning the league, as they went into the season after they won the league, he was chaffing is the word I'm looking at for being on the bench, as Leeds were kind of, their start was really kind of stuttering, right? So he just didn't think he was the kind of player he could play when they were really struggling for points. So he kept Cantona on the bench, and obviously Cantona didn't like this.
Well, no, I mean, being kept on the bench, Cantona was like a form of death, as Philippe Auclair explains to us again and again. Many things for Cantona are like a form of death.
But you know, the genius of Ferguson will say, right? All these things are always a bit elusive, I think. Like, what is it in particular about Ferguson, other than pointing at his watch vigorously towards the end of the game? What was it that what was it that made him so brilliant? But things that he got really right, and there was a couple in this book. Number one was, from the very start, he played Cantona immediately and played him for full games and just trusted Cantona and kind of figured that that's how you got the best out of Cantona. And the other one was, Keane said that Ferguson standing behind Cantona when he kicked your man was just kind of a masterstroke and not something that most managers would have done.
Apparently, in the immediate aftermath of the kick, Ferguson went storming into Alan Wiley, the referee's room, giving it, "This is all your fucking fault. If you'd done your job, none of this would have happened." And that's probably the truth, but that's certainly what you want from your manager, wouldn't? I mean, you'd think that a man as fearsome as Ferguson, like right behind you, you'd play for him, wouldn't you? You would if you had him behind you. If he was on your side, I mean, that's the thing. Fergie was never on anyone's side apart from Man United, which is why he was so combative and so despised by opposing fans. But to have that lad in your corner, it must have felt amazing.
Yeah. But sorry, just on the Leeds stuff, he scored a couple of beautiful goals for Leeds. He played 15 times, 9 times as a sub the year they won the league, because he joined, halfway through the season. But there was a sense at the time that Leeds didn't really have the kind of, the staying power and the steel to kind of see the season out. Arsenal were the defending champions. There was a few good teams and stuff. But Cantona kind of brought that kind of je ne sais quoi. But then in the next year, I think he scored 9 goals in 15 then. Oh, no, sorry. He scored 9 in 9. So he started amazingly, even though Leeds were doing crap. But then he was frozen out by Wilkinson. So maybe he had every right. He scored a hat-trick in the Charity Shield against Chelsea. And then he scored a hat-trick against Spurs in the league. So Wilkinson, what are you doing, man? What are you doing?
Well, that's right. But that is his epitaph, and he gets to live with that. He seems unconcerned by that choice, but then I think you'd be loath to admit your mistake in something so significant.
Yeah, so he does leave, and the rest, as they say, is history.
Yeah, it is. 1.2 million. The greatest buy in Premier League history.
Yeah, like, football will never be as good again for the rest of my life.
It's actually a golden period right now, Johnny. I don't know if you know. But it's,
can you imagine, right? So, Cantona signs for Manchester United. Ireland are qualifying for the World Cup in America. What a time to be young.
Yeah, no kidding. England didn't even qualify for the World Cup and Forest were getting relegated. Boom.
So United win the league. They hadn't won it for 26 years. Steve McMahon plays against Cantona, marks Cantona in his debut, providing constant provocations, and Cantona refused to shake his hand at the end of the game.
I'd refuse to shake Steve McMahon's hand if it was preferred to me. No thanks, sir.
He's a funny one, isn't he, Cantona? He signs for United, and then when they go to play at Ellen Road, he goes out to warm up, and obviously they're booing him like mad, so he goes down, he waits for all the rest of the United players to go in, and he just stays out there in front of the Leeds fans, like doing keepy-uppies, and then he just bangs the ball into the top corner and just strolls off down the tunnel.
Your Cantona, that, isn't it? Well, in his very essence. I mean, we've pretty much covered it all now. The book ends with his retiring. And he doesn't cover any of his life post that, which is actually very refreshing, isn't it? It's great. He just says like, oh, he did this, beach football, divorced his wife, married someone else, and that's it.
I was looking at a video on YouTube of Cantona out walking his goat in the middle of a street. His goat on a lead. Sometimes I think maybe he's, the whole thing is this kind of studied, nonchalance, doesn't care what anyone thinks. But I think when you're at walking your goat stage.
Well, Johnny, I didn't know you were going to say this, but there is someone who occasionally brings a goat into my work. And obviously, there is. There really is, Johnny. It really is. And obviously, it provokes much excitement. But I can tell you, the person that brings the goat in is a fucking weirdo. I mean, of course they are. It's like, you want to come out for a drink, goat? No. Well, you're going to, because everyone's going to pay attention to me. I mean, really, it's look at me. Look at me. I've got a goat.
Yeah, Cantona doesn't need a goat to be noticed. So why is he going around with a goat? By the way, did you know that Andrei Kanchelskis is Ukrainian?
No, but declared for Russia. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, of course he could be ethnically Russian. He is managing in Russia now. But yeah, he's Ukrainian.
You live and you learn. I can just think of him doing that salute.
By the way, United won the league after 26 years. Cantona played unfit in the Charity Shield. That was Roy Keane's debut when David Seaman famously missed a penalty. I was at that match, Al. That was the first United game I ever attended. And if I'm not mistaken, I didn't know that I had attended Roy Keane's United debut. I think I also attended his Ireland debut. And I haven't even been to all that many games, but there you go. It was a friendly against Chile, if I'm not mistaken. I went with my dad.
Oh, Roy Keane completist.
Did you know that David Ginola is a big dickhead?
I don't think he is.
And you don't think he is? Cantona thinks so.
Maybe Cantona's a dickhead. He's jealous because he's better looking.
England were not the only team not to make it to the World Cup in 1994. France needed a point from 2 games against Israel and Bulgaria. And they went ahead against Israel and still managed to fuck it up.
Yeah, that is wild, isn't it? I mean, I knew that story. Viginola will never play for France again after that, the Gerard Houllier rage. But I didn't realise that Cantona was involved in it. I just didn't know how involved Cantona was with the French team. I just wasn't. I didn't realise what a big part he played.
Yeah, 19 goals and 45 caps. And it was him and Papin who were kind of... Like, Papin probably was a bigger... Well, I don't know if he was a bigger name. But he was maybe the main man on the field. But they were kind of... It was the two of them ultimately, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And they were like chalk and cheese as well. Like Papin apparently had this like rustic farmer aura, which I was unaware of. I was just assumed he was some cool French guy, but no, they all laughed at him because he was a farmer. Whereas obviously Cantona was the poetry quoting, art loving cosmopolitan. But yeah, together they work well. And
Cantona loads DJ Deschamps as well, the water carrier.
Well, that's because he used to... I mean, that does sound annoying. Apparently, Didier Deschamps used to mock him and do like the accent from the Spitting Image puppet every time they met up. And yeah, that would... Oh, yeah. I can imagine Didier Deschamps a knobhead.
But just some of the stuff about the kick that I didn't know. Again, I was 11. So some of this stuff would have passed me by. United's share price dropped by 3 million, which I guess at the time was significant. The issue was raised in Parliament. Like an MP in England wanted him back, so the FA gave him a ban until the end of the year. And Cantona went off to Guadeloupe with his 6-month pregnant wife, Isabel. And ITV tracked him down. And did you know that he broke the rib of an ITV journalist while he was
I know. I know. And that, how did I not know that?
And everyone was fine with that. Everyone was like, you shouldn't be tracking him down. He's on his holidays. You can't be taking pictures of the pregnant wife.
Oh, and ITV, their pious response. We're surprised that Manchester United would find that a non-violent question should be resulted with violence. Oh, that was really gross, wasn't it?
Did you know this Paul Ince element that he had scalding tea thrown on him when he went in to help Cantona in the crowd and was there punching a few fans, shouting, "We'll take you all on," to the entire crowd at Sellers Park.
Yeah, he's the governor.
Yeah, well, he's the governor. And they were both charged with common assault. Ince was acquitted, and Cantona originally got 14 days in jail, but then instead it was reduced to 120 hours community service, where he just loved the children.
Just love them so much.
Yes.
The main takeaway with that is it's so unsatisfying. The connection he makes with Matthew Simmons is so very unsatisfying. I always thought Kung Fu was very, very generous, just like awkward kick over a barrier, inflicting zero pain and harm upon the recipient.
One fan who was very tragically overlooked is this guy, Paul Nixon, a Palace fan who was killed in some kind of skirmish when United and Palace met again in the FA Cup semi-final that year. Did you know about that?
No, I didn't.
Jeez, that's bad, isn't it? But anyway, on Cantona and his love of children, have you heard of Cantona doing much with children since? Not really, right?
No, not so much. I mean, I've always got that, the beach football. I saw him. They had beach football in Brighton. And so we went along. There was a lot of great players. There was I'm guessing about 2006, 2007. Letitia played. He'd been retired a year. He must have, done nothing but eat solidly. But Cantona's French team were playing, and Cantona was on the sideline, and I was there just screaming the whole game, like, fucking get on the pitch, go on, get on. Just screaming at Cantona, and at the end of the game, I just screamed, and he didn't come on at all, and this bloke just puts his hand on my shoulder and goes, "That's Cantona's brother, Joel Cantona. Cantona's stuck in an airport," and it's like, you could have told me that 20 minutes ago. Instead of me screaming my head off like a fucking idiot all the way through the game. Yeah, so I saw Joel Cantona, but I never saw Eric Cantona play beach football.
Football in the 90s was different, wasn't it? So that year, when, that really famous year, when United clawed Newcastle back to win the league, United at one point were 10 points behind, which I guess everybody kind of remembers maybe. But they went nearly 2 months without winning a game. That just couldn't happen now.
No, it's astonishing. All the top teams, they had a 0-0 at Oldham or something. It's like, how the fuck do you draw 0-0 at Oldham? None of the big teams do that now. They just swat. Yeah, it was much.
And then Newcastle got 4 points out of 15 then in the run-in, and that's what allowed United to claw them back. But he comes back, everybody knows this, he comes back, they win the league again. He's totally vindicated because he's ultimately good at football. And then he plays another season. They win the league again, but it's kind of petering out for him. As you say, he's definitely, his shape is different and stuff, isn't it? And maybe his style of play he's less mobile and stuff. But he scored his last goal for Manchester United on the 12th of April, 1997. And later that month, the last 2 weeks of April, the city of 13,000 people came to see Michael Brown's Art of the Game in the City of Manchester Art Gallery. Have you looked up that picture? Do you remember that picture?
Yeah, I don't remember it from the time. It's pretty cool though. Huh?
It's so ludicrous. So it's modelled on Piero della Francesca's Resurrection of Christ, which is obviously.
Yeah, I can picture that in my head. Yeah.
Yeah, and to Andrea Mantegna's Julius Caesar on his triumphal chariot.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't really sure which one, but yeah, I get it. But yeah, so it's Cantona half clad in a toga holding some kind of scepter or some kind of massive axe. And then he's got the various kind of Fergie's fledglings, literally the worst nickname ever in football, are the kind of Roman centurions kind of gathered around at his knee. Okay, I guess it's supposed to be funny, but it's so ridiculous, that painting.
Well, I liked it. So there you go. And the most ridiculous nickname in football is the Lionesses. I
don't know, Fergie's fledglings. Yeah. Who came up with that?
Uh, I know, but it stuck to me. He got back. Well, they did say Busby Babe, so we have to do something the same.
Just furiously reading the dictionary for something beginning with F that means like children, essentially.
I know. I was trying to come up with one on the fly, and I couldn't. To be honest, like I was like, oh, maybe Alex. Alex is nope, nope. Haven't got nothing. Yeah, fledglings was the best they had. Like,
Yeah, shocking. So, that year, and this is kind of the the kind of denouement, I guess, in Europe was they got to the semi-final and played against Borussia Dortmund, and that European Cup was going to be played in Munich, which has obviously got some significance for Manchester United because of the Munich air crash. But Cantona was a ghost in the semi-final, and this is when Keane is kind of trashing him. Obviously,
do you remember this game?
Yeah. Paul Lambert played in that game, I think, didn't he?
I remember. I was watching it in a pub. Me being a lot older than you, but I can remember how devastating it was. I was really upset. I really wanted United to do well that year, and yeah, really frustrating.
Everybody was secretly a United fan at the time. I'm still convinced of that.
I think you might get some pushback on that, Johnny.
How could you not be?
I just desperately wanted an English team to do well in Europe because I'd never seen it. Because obviously, when I was a kid, I just wanted an English team to do well in Europe. I thought it would reflect well on England, and United did have that aura.
But football is just always just so much more interesting when you're familiar with the protagonists, right? I could watch Galatasaray and Fenerbahce play the best damn game, and it wouldn't be that interesting to me.
No, you're quite right. Yeah, I'll always. I can remember. I'm sure I've said this before, but there's like, let's watch Real Madrid versus Barcelona. I think Norwich are playing Southampton. I'm going to watch that. Because I know all these players.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I've probably thrown a few sly digs at Cantona, but my God, did I love that man as a child.
I mean, I would say this: he changed football more than any other person, I think, as a youth. I mean, the other candidates would be your Bergkamps and your Wengers, but it was Cantona who made me see what was possible for a footballer to do. I remember him just scoring some goals, going, none of the other lads could have done that. He could just do things other people couldn't do at that time, and certainly in England.
Philippe Auclair talking about that Newcastle team, saying Peter Beardsley reminding people that English players could play exciting, a football. And if you just compare Cantona and Beardsley, that's the thing about Cantona, right? He's walking his goat down the streets now, but my God, was he fucking cool. He was so cool.
Yeah, absolutely the coolest. Yeah.
But, these guys just, heroes should never get old, How can you... that thing, and it's very central to the book. You mentioned everything is a death to Cantona, and that's kind of how Philippe Auclair kind of talks about Cantona ending his career was like his death. But there is something to it, I guess, That is, like, there can be no act two for a guy like that. Obviously, he tried to be an actor, and he probably had reasonable success. But, he's doing gambling ads and stuff like that now, which is a bit disappointing, isn't it?
Oh, it is, because he talks all the way through how money wasn't important to him. Yeah. But, of course, it was. Although, just very interestingly, he was on $5,000 a week at United. Fucking hell, football's changed, isn't it? $5,000 a week.
Inter were going to give him 25 grand.
I know. I had to double check. I was like, "They could times his wages by what?" And that will make it 25 grand. I know, that was astonishing, wasn't it? And even his Nike advert, $500,000 a year. I mean, fucking Ronaldo gets $500,000 for sending a tweet.
Can you imagine? I would have liked to have been in the room when Philippe Auclair saw Cantona's gambling ad.
Yeah, absolutely devastated.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway, that's the book, isn't it?
First of all, I'd just like to thank Dave Atherall, one of our listeners who suggested this book. Dave has his own book out. It's called Embers. It's based around Brighton and Hove Albion. It's a work of fiction and has a foreword by Steve Gritt, who I know you know who that is, Johnny. He was the manager who saved Brighton from being relegated out of the league. And now look at them. Now look at them. Frightening me and our opponents in the FA Cup quarter-final.
So, okay, what did you think of this book?
I liked this book, but it really was hampered for me by the declaration right from the get-go that there wouldn't be many tidbits, and there weren't really. I was interested to learn about his early life. I didn't love this book though, Johnny. I was happy to finish it, to be honest, despite my liking for Auclair. I thought it was okay. I'd give it 5 out of 10, 2.5 stars. Johnny, what did you think?
I liked it because it was Cantona. I liked it because it was United. I think I would have liked it more if I didn't have to read it in 2 weeks. A 12-hour book for me in 2 weeks that requires a Herculean effort from me. So it did feel a bit like homework at times. And I do think that football books, just as a rule, they shouldn't be so long. Like who wants to read that much about a single player? But I did like it. It wasn't my favourite book. And I think culturally, there was a cultural element in that. Those turns about, philosophy and the arts and stuff, they were a bit self-indulgent, I thought, at times. But I did like it. And I thought Auclair is a nice writer. He writes well. I liked other elements about how he writes and stuff. And it was quite charming how much he adores Cantona. And, unlike that guy who wrote the book about Duncan Ferguson, at least I understand it.
Well, I give it 2.5 seagulls. And how many sardines will those 2.5 seagulls be sharing?
I would say 3.5. 3.5 sardines for this book.
Well, that's some happy seagulls. Nice plump seagulls. No, it was perfectly all right. I think, for me, it was all right. And I did learn a bit. I was a bit disappointed I didn't learn more about his time at United. And again, there was not very, his monastic, he was a happily married man, wasn't he, for many years, so boring.
Well, the French squad were apparently...
Oh, fucking hell, that's the one story. Yeah, I'm glad you got that in. I was so desperate to fucking throw that in. Yeah, they all used to go to a nightclub, which doubled as a porno studio. Lovely stuff. But the best, what was that nightclub called, Johnny?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I remember. It's a Scotland Ford. It was Che Adams. The porno studio was called Che Adams. Oh, I loved it. Che with a Z, but there you go. Nice.
Oh, shit.
Footballer born in Leicester.
Yeah, okay. And as it's Lent, it's God month. So what are we doing next?
Well, there we go. We're doing the fabulously titled Taking Lettice, the Matthew Letitia autobiography. Now, this was written before Matt Letitia turned into a bona fide weirdo. So I'm quite excited to see how it goes. I think I'm going to enjoy it. I think before the weirdness, Letitia was kind of a cool guy.
Yeah, okay, Al. Thank you very much. Thanks as always to Dara. We'll be back next week with a draft of players who've never won the league, the Premier League, that is.
Yes, exactly. So maybe I can turn around my ailing fortunes in the draft format.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Al.
Thank you, Johnny, and we'll see you all next week.
Let your body spin like there is nothing in life but that.